I'm thinking so.
August 26th, the year of our Lord 2021. Worth getting up for. I have yet to. You've never heard that? Okay.
Not here.
Okay.
Usually only in church.
Well, I am half asleep, but it is worth getting up for.
Pastor Thomas.
I'm half up.
Pastor Thomas.
Thank you, my children. I don't know what they do. Anyway, that water or anything. I'd be in trouble with vampires. All right, thank you. So we want to start. So we always start with some inspirational words. Making his way to the stage, let's hear it.
Thank you, Mr. President, fellow Toastmasters, and our guests this morning. Try to be brief. Be better than you were yesterday. Learn as much as you can about as many topics as you can. And hopefully today, as we join both virtually and in person, to become better speakers, better listeners, and better people.
Along with the invocation, we do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd like to stand, we have a flag. Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I always find it interesting when people recite things together, that they all have their own individual cadence. I don't know if there's a musical training you can do to get yourself to be on the same cadence or not. But you ready? You set?
Any announcements? Joey, yes, ma'am.
I was going to do announcements at the end.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's roll. 7:10. Sure.
All right. So for our meeting this morning, we have a Toastmaster who stepped up last week when an opportunity arose that he could do Toastmaster role this week. And it is my pleasure to welcome up here our Toastmaster for today, Harding.
Good morning, Thomas, fellow Toastmasters, both present and virtual. Were there any announcements?
We could do it at the end.
Okay.
Like you said.
Save your announcements till the end. A couple pieces of housekeeping this morning. We need a word master and a general evaluator. I have a word, if anyone would like to take and record it. I have the word. Here, Larry. Try that again. Thank you, Larry. So we have a word. How about a general evaluator? Mike Licata? Okay. So make a note. Mike Licata, general evaluator, Larry McKenzie, word master. We do not have a printed agenda. I'm sure 99, maybe not 99, or 20 some odd, however many people are with us this morning, have it on their phone. You can use your phone technology or your laptop this morning. I couldn't get the agenda to print on my new printer without printing 2 pages. Anyway, moving forward to the theme of the day, with Kate Orr's help and guidance, I decided to take on the role as Toastmaster this morning. So thank you, Kate, for giving me a little nudge. Summertime pleasures is the theme I chose this morning for many reasons. When I think of summertime, personally, I think of time, yes, we do have to work, unless you're retired. but the time in the summer where you can just relax, whether it be with your family, your friends, co-workers, just relax and enjoy this beautiful weather we've been having. At this point, I'd like to make a toast. Well, if any of you have a drink, your favorite beverage, raise your glass. This is a toast to summertime pleasures. May they continue. Soak up as many rays as you can, because you know it's not going to last forever. Enjoy. You're here.
You're here.
Moving into our roll holders this morning, I'm going to start with the general evaluator, Mike Licata. Mike, please explain your role as general evaluator.
Morning again, fellow Toastmasters. My job this morning is general evaluator to evaluate the evaluators and the Toastmaster and the overall tone of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Michael. Next is our word master, Larry Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Today's word is exhilarating. Like our meetings are exhilarating, to make one feel happy and excited. So today, use exhilarating in all of your table topics or your speeches, or whenever you have an opportunity to speak. Exhilarating. I will put it in the chat for those of you that are having trouble spelling it, Dave. He's looking at me like deer in the headlights. Exhilarating.
Larry. Well, please use the word exhilarating whenever you get the opportunity during the meeting. Our next roll holder is our master, Beth Banks. Beth.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. And I hope that today is an exhilarating day. I have a lot planned on my agenda, so I have to do it from home. My job today as master is to count those ahs and ums and pregnant pauses that are not really supposed to be there. Fellow Toastmasters, have a good morning. Back to you, Marty.
Thank you, Beth. Next, our grammarian, Ann Halstead.
Hi, this morning I'm going to be listening for very good examples of the use of the English language, and then maybe some not so good uses. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Carol Ann. Our quote master this morning, filling in and stepping up for the role, Len Thornton. Len.
Thank you, Larry. Our quote for today is by John Lubbock. Rest is not idleness. And to lie sometimes on the grass, under trees on a summer's day, listening to the murmur of the water or watching the clouds float across the sky is by no means a waste of time. Mr. Toastmaster.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful quote, Len. Next up, our jester, David Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I think I have some exhilarating jokes because I found them on hilarioussummerjokes.com. So evidently they're going to be hilarious. But what is the best day to go to the beach? A Sunday. Sunday. And where do sharks go on vacation, on summer vacation? They go to Finland. Finland, of course. What do you call a snowman on summer vacation?
Funnel.
A puddle. That's an easy one. Why do fish like to eat worms? Because they get hooked on them. I guess they're like potato chips. And finally, my last hilarious joke is, What kind of music do killer whales like? They like to listen to the orchestra. That's for Toastmaster.
Thank you for getting us all to smile this morning, David. Moving on to our timer, Sylvia.
I'm sorry, Sylvia. It's okay. I do not want to do it.
Sorry.
You can stay right there, the microphone.
Listening to Kate, she had me distracted this morning. Table topics time is between 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. You'll see a green light at 1.5. There's the green. Yellow at 1:45 and 2 minutes be red. And most of the speeches are 5 to 7 minutes with a 30-second buffer. And evaluators are 2 to 3 minutes with a 30-second buffer also. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Next up is our tech and gesture master, Jennifer Zappa. Jennifer, thank you for filling this role this morning.
Thank you. I will be your tech and gesture master today. So I will be trying to observe the technology use and the way that we use our body language. It's difficult because I know some of us are on Zoom and some of us are in person. So there's so much to see. Thank you.
Next is our quiz master, Tom Moran.
Oh, he's not there.
Tom Moran,
Volunteer.
volunteer for quiz master.
Okay. Jackie.
Jackie Kenny. Jackie, please explain your role as quiz master.
Thank you, everyone. I will be paying attention to some of the facts and figures that are listed during speaking portions, and I'll do a little quiz at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Next up is our table topics master, Steve Smith. Steve, you can explain your role and then we can move right into the table topics portion if you'd like. Steve Smith. Is that mic or?
I don't know.
Give him the regular mic. He's right there.
There we go.
We're working. Okay. I have the honor of doing table topics today, which means I'm going to call on some of you lucky people to speak extemporaneously. And we have a problem. I have a grand total of 2 people who do not have a job that are here. Unless I'm missing something, and I don't. Everybody there's got a job. I looked at that.
Double calls.
What?
Mark Campos.
Yeah, he does. He's an evaluator.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's my evaluator.
Don't confuse me.
I'm sorry.
The theme today is summer pleasures. Well, there's a lot of things we do in the summertime. Some we haven't been able to do because of the pandemic that's going on. So I'd like to ask Dave Licata, guess what? What is it that you are doing this year that you weren't able to do last year? That you normally do during the summer?
Mr. Toastmaster, Mr. Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and I wish there were some guests. My situation is thus. Now, I hate to sound like the old fart, but I am an old fart. I can't. So I found it very exhilarating throughout the pandemic that the things that I enjoy most, golf, fishing, hanging out, had nothing to do with the pandemic. And to reinforce this claim, a year ago, you could go into Walmart and you couldn't find enough fishing gear to fish a kid's tackle box. The golf ball shelves at Walmart were empty as well, because those of us who fish and golf know that was pandemic proof. But especially the way I go, there's plenty of social distancing out there. I'm never near anybody. So I just kept going on. So what am I doing this year that I didn't do last year pandemic wise? Well, I'm enjoying the freedom of movement. A year ago at this time, especially not so much August, but last May, my life consisted of going from one corner of my house, we'll call it the west end of my house. I had a nice chair in the living room, and then I would go to the east end of my house where I had another chair in the family room. But I decided early on that I wasn't going to let the pandemic spoil my fishing or my golf or my getting about. Thank you so much, Mr. Tabletop Master.
Thank you, Dave. Now, myself, as everybody knows, I love to do my star shows, which I couldn't do last year. Well, so far this year, we haven't done any, and we're just now talking about what protocols we're going to put in place so we can resume doing our live shows. So even this year, there are things we cannot do that we did last year. So Tom, you're the other one that doesn't have a job. What can you tell us about something that you still can't do this year due to this pandemic?
Mr. Tabletop Toastmaster. Our Toastmaster today, fellow Toastmasters and Toastmasters online. Something I still can't do. I can't do 10 push-ups, but that has nothing to do with the pandemic. Some of my favorite things to do during the summer are sleep in every day that I can. But I get up for AM Lockport, of course. I think the biggest thing that I still can't do is get together with my whole family for Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day. Many people are still affected and could be affected by COVID virus, so they don't go out into public. And if one member of the family doesn't go, their spouse doesn't go. If they're there, then the spouse isn't going, nieces and nephews aren't going. As soon as nieces and nephews, great nieces and nephews aren't going. So rather than a party of like 300, we end up with a party of like 9. And with enough tables set up for 300, we're all we all have our own table, and we all are well social distanced. I think the large gatherings of family is one of the things that I miss the most. Hearing the stories, I'm not a big Facebook person, so the only way I find out that someone's pregnant or had a baby or anything is like when I see them, or if they give me a phone call. So that's normally at family gatherings. I just wish that I could be more connected with my friends and family, which is why I'm very happy that we're back, at least meeting in person for our hybrid meetings. And I find it exhilarating to get up every Thursday morning and meet with everyone here. Thank you.
That exhausts the people who didn't have a job. Now, Marty especially stepped up to do a table topic for us. We're looking for one other volunteer after that because we're short a speaker. So, Marty, looking just a different direction, something that you do or will do yet this summer that is going to go on regardless. The pandemic had no bearing on it whatsoever. Something you're looking forward to doing this summer.
Thank you, Mr. Topics Master. Something that I am going to do this summer, even though the pandemic is with us, I'm sure many of you can guess that I'm going to pull out I'm going to pull out of this grab bag here.
You got a canoe in there?
No canoe. I couldn't fit it in, Dave. It wouldn't fold up that small. Sorry. I could only get it into one piece. Anyways, some of you know that I raise hens in Gasport, and I have 6 hens. And I am not prejudiced at all. I can honestly say that I have 2 white hens. They're white leghorns. I have 2 black Australops, and I have 2 red hens. And every day I have the pleasure, the exhilarating pleasure, I must say, of going out, opening up the hatch box. Look what I found. Eggs. Every day I get, even during this weather, the heat sometimes affects them. I've been fairly lucky, and I've been getting on the average of 1 egg per hen per day. I'm very fortunate in that regard. So, Mr. Topics Master, I look forward to daily pleasure of going out at the chicken coop, no matter virus, no virus, whatever there is. My hens are very healthy, and I get fresh eggs every day. And it's a very exhilarating pleasure for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. I'm in no hurry. Everybody else probably isn't. Now, we need a volunteer, someone who already has a job who will be willing to talk for a couple minutes on table topics. Anybody? Jeff, thank you, Jeff.
What would you like me to talk about?
I'll give you a toss-up. You can either talk about something that you got to do this year, you couldn't do last year, or something you still can't do. Your choice.
God. It's been over a year since I've taken a vacation, like a proper actual vacation. And I do actually have one planned. I'm supposed to be leaving on Friday. And I have to tell you, like, it should be exciting. I should be like really anticipating all of the exhilaration involved in taking a vacation. But I am so nervous about every single aspect of it and what to expect and what could happen. And I've been so nervous about like being in public in general in the last couple of weeks because I'm like, oh my God, what if I get sick before I go? And my brain has developed this anxiety that never ever seems to go away in the last year, no matter how much I try. So that's one thing that I have really not appreciated very much about the pandemic in general. There are things that I have appreciated. I realized who's important in my life and how much I value the time that I get to spend with the people that I really care about. And I've had a lot more time to myself to spend time valuing things that I want to value or focusing on things that I want to focus on. So that's something that I appreciate about it. But it hasn't been all fun and exhilaration. There's still that anxiety that I think we all thought would level out or disappear or go away. And at least for me, and I think for many others, it's there at some level. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Mr. Wordmaster, how did the word of the day do?
I'm gonna come right up here with you, Mr. Toast, or your tabletop. Mr. Tabletop Master. I have to tell you, the word of the day was very exhilarating. And Dave Licata, you didn't like that? Yeah. Dave Licata used it once. Thomas Heldwein used it once. Marty used it twice. And Jen used exhilaration twice. Everyone qualifies.
Thank you. Now, Madam Timer, how did we do on time today?
All 4 contestants qualified. Dave at 1.55, Thomas at 2.03, Marty at 1.38, and Jen at 1.49. So they all qualify.
Thank you. I will now turn the meeting back over to our Toastmaster, Marty.
Thank you, Steve. Please private message Larry McKenzie
With the vote.
with the vote for
The Zoom people.
Zoom people, specifically for best table topics. Your best table topics, please private message Larry McKenzie. Thank you. Now that we've had a timers report and we voted for best table topics, I just wanted to share one other exhilarating experience. And if any of you have not had an exhilarating experience this summer and you'd like one, I'm going to give you an exhilarating experience it's a free idea. Okay, picture this. A day like yesterday, it's 90 degrees, maybe 90 plus. You have an hour of spare time and you're groggy, you're sweaty, you're miserable because it's so hot. What can you do to cheer up and exhilarate yourself? This is a suggestion. Drive to Newfane on Route 78. Go to Ide Road. And if you don't know where Ide Road is, Google it. Go to Ide Road. When you get to the bridge, stop, turn right, go up into this little dirt path, and it's a fishing access to the Ide Road Bridge to 18 Mile Creek. Okay? And I must say, you must pack the following: a pair of old sneakers, a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and a towel if you need one. You probably wouldn't need one though when it's 90 degrees, because what I'm going to tell you next. You're sweat, you're dripping, probably sweating, and you want to be exhilarated. So what do? You walk into the creek. Most time here it's only a foot or two deep. You walk into the creek and you sit down into the creek and you put your hands behind you and you just close your eyes and you just relax. And you can feel the little bit of current that there is in 18 Mile Creek just washes all your troubles away, and you get this feeling going through your body and you feel great. And you get up, and like I said, it's so warm, you don't even need really a towel to dry off. By the time you walk back to your car, you're probably going to be dry. But that's a free, exhilarating experience. Some of you may be interested and some not. Food for thought, check it out. Moving into our prepared speech portion of the meeting, we have two prepared speeches this morning. Our first speaker is Kate Orr. In evaluating Kate this morning, is Evaluator Mark Campos. Mark, please give us the objectives of Kate's speech. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters, good morning. It is my privilege to be evaluating Kate, who is working out of the persuasive influence pathway. The project is researching and presenting. The purpose of this project is for the member to learn or review basic research methods and present a well-organized, well-researched speech on any topic. Madam Timer, her time is 5 to 7 minutes. And Mr. Toastmaster, I have an introduction and title. Do you have them as well?
I do.
So you will deliver the introduction, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Mark. Our first speaker this morning, Kate Orr, and I would at this time like to share a brief introduction. Until our hybrid planning research, Kate admits she never stepped foot inside of this Bewley building where we are this morning. It's a mainstay of Lockport architecture. She also admits that the only reason that she stopped there at all were for rare visits to an insurance company with a small office on the front side of the building. That only began because it's located across the street from the DMV, and therefore the fastest option for car insurance. Now, meeting here for Toastmasters has piqued Kate's interest in the history of this location at the heart of Lockport along the Erie Canal. Today, she will share with us a brief synopsis of her research. Fellow Toastmasters, please help me welcome Kate Orr, the Bewley Building, Kate Orr.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our honored Zoom participants. The Bewley Building here where we're meeting back in person is a 5-story brick Italian Revival Renaissance building. It takes up an entire city block, and it's been a major part of the city's downtown since the roaring 20s. Well, why? Let's take a quick look back and see why. The current building was constructed upon the foundation of the old Hodge Opera House. That, in the late 1800s, was a grand center of entertainment and of business and culture, commerce in the city of Lockport. In its heyday, the Hodge Opera House spanned 50 years during Lockport's booming beginning along the Erie Canal. John Hodge owned Merchant's Gargling Oil.
Good for man and beast.
Is that really the motto? Good for man and beast from the audience is hollered. Merchant's Gargling Oil. Couldn't find much on that, but I'm glad that you knew. And he, in fact, was the most successful businessman in Lockport at the time. He was the most prosperous business and began construction of the 3-story Opera House back in 1871. It started immediately outside here, outside the building where the Erie Canal, and was delivered 55 tons of sandstone from Ohio, and the construction began. A year later, it opened, and it opened to a full house and exhilarating performance of Shakespeare's Hamlet, and the lead actor, do you know this too? All these tidbits of trivia. Edwin Adams from Boston, a prominent American actor of the 1860s, 70s, and 80s, until he passed away suddenly. He traveled around the world, but he was here in Lockport. The building itself was made of 3 stories. The 3rd story held the theater, and the first 2 stories held almost 50 businesses, offices, retail operations, storefronts. Now, a decade later, fire destroyed the original Hodge Opera House. It was a cold January night in 1881. The cause of the blaze was said to be probably a cigarette or cigar that was tossed and carelessly caused the burning of the building. The firefighters responded in the evening, doused the blame, left, and it reignited, unfortunately, overnight. It destroyed it further the next morning, along with many local records, birth records, death records, and governmental paperwork proceedings. John Hodge immediately began a rebuild. A year later, opened again. It reopened and stayed open for 40 years as a center for running shows and entertainment in the Lockport area. In 1901, memorials for William McKinley, the president who was assassinated in Buffalo, was held here at the Hodge Opera House, probably the most attended event in the building's history. He was assassinated at the Pan Am Exposition at the Temple of Music nearby, for anyone who's unaware. The Hodge Opera House continued to run entertainment until 1914, when everything was replaced entirely by office space. Now, the closing of the theater was said to be a result of the emerging motion picture industry, which made classic theater in smaller locales less sustainable. Then in 1928, another fire broke out. It burned down almost completely. It broke out in the basement and quickly spread to the Hodge building next door. The firefighters beat back the blaze over 24 hours, but most of the building was lost. Construction of the current Bewley building started a year later. It was onto the foundation of the old Opera House. one of these days when it's a bit nicer out, or if you're good in the 90-degree humid weather, take a walk around the building and you can see the foundation and the original stone walls that still exist here. The large chimney of the old Hodge building and that foundation can still be viewed from the rear of the building towards the Erie Canal. The current building exists of 200 individual office spaces from floors 2 to 5 and 10 retail storefronts down on the street level, plus the cafe directly below us. The Cousins Cafe, which gives us our Wi-Fi. So check out Cousins Cafe on your Wi-Fi if you still need it, with password 1 is their password. And maybe buy a coffee sometime. The Bewley building as it's seen today was erected by Richard Bewley. It's passed through generations of the Bewley family, including Charles Bewley, who was a real estate broker. It's now out of the Bewley family, but it's gone through quite a history. In 1955, the first self-operating elevator on the Niagara frontier was built in this building. Not much happened that was statistically interesting until jump ahead some decades, but it was definitely a commerce center for all of Niagara County. Jumping to the 90s, the lobby downstairs that those of us in person come into every week was renovated. Unfortunately, they took down some of the Art Deco and replaced it with the granite and marble that exists today. However, in 2005, there was some renovations that brought back that Art Deco. So about 16 years ago, it was a full facelift on the marble, the awnings, windows, elevators, and more. It's restored the look more to the 1920s Art Deco with a bit of a modern touch. In 2018, in the winter time, December, almost 3 years ago, the building was added to the Niagara County National Register of Historic Places. It was nominated by architect Clinton Brown. In fact, in my research, I discovered, and probably David knows this, fully 29 buildings in Lockport are on the National Register for Historic Places. 29. They're not all buildings. Some are connected to the Erie Canal in other ways, but they do mostly date from the time of the thriving economic center in the later 1800s, when the site of the locks and port that we know as Lockport, which moves boats up the same steep escarpment landscape known for creating nearby Niagara Falls. And that's a speech for another time. The sources for this research include the Bewley Building website's history, local historian Bruce Aiken, the Buffalo News Archives, and the National Historical Register of Places. Mr. Toastmaster. The Bewley Building.
Thank you, Kate. Our second speaker this morning is Nancy Ferry. Evaluating Nancy is Philip Russell. Phil, please explain the objectives of Nancy's speech project. Phil.
Good morning. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. All right. The reason I had a little technical difficulty there, but my summer pleasures was able to do two. One, go to the Billy Joel concert that we had to go. The only problem there was they treated you like cattle. Number two, went to my favorite new time group, the Blackberry Smoke, even got a t-shirt. And number three, got a new summer hat for the Buffalo Bills. It's the goofiest one I've ever had, and it works great. Now, as far as Nancy's concerned, she and I, hopefully that's good grammar, communicated on both the phone, old school, and through texting, new school, to make sure that we got everything straight. Now, Nancy is working in the pathways, but today's speech is not from pathways. Nancy, like a lot of us, has a fear of the computer or dislike of the computer because you're using it every day. And she had said she has a speech she wants to give. It is 5 to 7 minutes, Madam or Mr. Timer. Now, what is going on is I am going to give her an evaluation from old school, plus using the new evaluation criteria on that, and I will get her a copy of her evaluation so it counts. And my feeling is, if you are not working in pathways, there's nothing wrong with going back to old school using the manuals. We have those and they're available. It's just that you don't get credit for it. However, if it's important for you to go for your DTM, you need to go through pathways. Now, oh, that's my filler word. I always use that stupid word. I'm catching on. Nancy is going to give us an exhilarating speech. It's called, or topic, do you have that topic, Mr. Toastmaster?
No,
You do?
I do.
All right, then I don't have to give it. So turn it back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
So, our second speaker this morning is Nancy Ferry. Nancy is the Director of Spiritual Care and Bereavement Service at Niagara Hospice. And I was fortunate to have the staff and Nancy care for my father, James, when he was at hospice before he passed away. And I am proud to say that the staff and Nancy took excellent care of my father. This morning, let us listen to Nancy as she presents Caretaking 101. Nancy Ferry, Caretaking 101.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. I'm so glad to be in person. And I've had enough of video, and I'm glad that you on the video camera are not tired of it. Let me begin with introducing you to. This is my mother-in-law, Edith Ferry, 92 years old, and we have become caretakers for her, caregivers. We've had her living with us for 3 years. We moved into an apartment that was accessible for her. It can be challenging, fun, exhilarating. Some of the things, I'm going to use the Carol Burnett style here to change the slides. Anybody who remembers Carol Burnett? Some of the challenges that face us with dealing with someone who's elderly and also has dementia is to help her grieve the loss of her husband, to help her find fond memories to recall and to live by. We celebrate holidays, a little bit of baking, a little bit of Easter egg dyeing. We try different things to keep her memory fresh and to help her feel good about herself. Also, Miss Edith doesn't like to do too much, so we try to keep her arms moving. We have occupational therapy coming, but in between times we try things like cornhole. We try to challenge her with puzzles to keep her mind alert. We also try to keep her very safe during the pandemic and give her opportunities to visit with her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren. Have bird feeders out in the backyard so that she can enjoy the birds and the noise, the sound she absolutely loves, and she waits all day for a cardinal to come because she is sure that the cardinal is her husband visiting her, and we are so glad that there are several cardinals that come. Also, I've had to improvise as a hairdresser, and if you'll notice these little strange things sticking out of my mother-in-law's hair, we ran out of curlers that had little caps on them. I don't know how to curl hair. I always went and got my hair cut as short as possible. Never had curly hair. So we use these little clippy things. I think it looks kind of like an alien, but it curled and it looked nice, and she was happy and felt good about herself. Being a caregiver requires a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of patience. But what I've learned is I cannot be a caregiver unless I fill my own cup, take care of myself. If I'm pouring from an empty cup, I have nothing left to give. And that causes resentments and anger and frustration. So I found that self-care is the best form of self-love. So with exhilaration, the relationship with myself reflects relationships with others. So how I care for myself is how I live my life with the rest of the people that I come in contact with. That includes work. So I try to start my day like this. Every day is a perfect day just to be happy. It sometimes goes downhill, but I try to start that way. I try to carve out some time for myself, reading books, just hanging out, doing nothing. Those really help me to find a sense of peace and tranquility. My happy place, my exhilaration place. Let me tell you about the place that we go for the summer. I wish it was the whole summer, but it's only the weekends that we get to go. We have a granny sitter that comes and stays over from Friday night till Sunday morning, and we get out of town as fast as we can. We bought a place up on Lime Sodas Bay, which is east of Rochester, still east of Sodas Bay, and we enjoy it. It's called the Holiday Harbor. This is on the right, left, whichever way you're looking at it, I don't know. The one with the lights around it is our place, that's our, yeah. And when you enter the space, the lighthouse is there. It's not lit up because it's not an official lighthouse. So they only light it up just for photos. And I guess it will confuse people if a lighthouse is lit and it's not a true lighthouse. Oh, we're so lucky because we're on the bay for sunrise and we're on Lake Ontario for sunset. And we have two campers. One of them is my wife's cousin who play every either Friday night or Saturday night, depending on the weather. One plays the bagpipe and one plays the snare drum. And they play the sunset down. And it's so beautiful, exhilarating. At camp, I use a lot of my creative skills, which aren't very many, but I try. There's a lot of rocks, so I can do things with rocks. I paint rocks, and I made myself a little fairy garden. Somehow, when I became a fairy, I decided I needed fairy gardens, so I started doing that. And I also have tried my luck at a camp chandelier there with the lamp and the little beads hanging down. I enjoy nature. We're right near the Chimney Bluffs, so I've walked up there several times each summer. I've seen a lot of bald eagles. I got so close we were in our kayak, my sister and I, and we got, I don't know, just so close that we could see every part of the young bald eagles. This wasn't a photograph that I took, believe me. I couldn't catch them. I enjoy time with my kayak and my little dog as the co-pilot. Lots of time with my dog, and she is just a delight. She runs around and takes charge of everything. We play games and that kind of things and socialize with people in the camp. And as fall comes and we start to wind down, just realizing that sometimes you just have to hang in there, and my kayak always awaits. Thank you, fellow Toastmasters.
Thank you, Nancy. May we please have a timer's report, Sylvia?
Yes. It was close, and Nancy got it right under. Well, 0.8 seconds over. 7.30. Oh, and Kate, it's 6.36.
Thank you, Sylvia. Mark your ballot for Kate or Sylvia, Kate or Nancy, and our members that are joining us virtually can private message Larry McKenzie with their vote for best teacher. Another one of my summertime pleasures is gardening. Some of you know that I have a small green thumb, and I will briefly show you a couple things that I've been working on. Tomatoes. This tomato is about a week old. It's been in my refrigerator. I made the mistake of buying too many plants. But fear not, fear not, fear not, because I am going to I'm going to can tomatoes. I'm very fortunate to have a mother, even though she's 86 years old, is willing to coach me on canning. And I plan on doing that this Friday, along with my sister, who is going to be making a visit to my mom's Friday. I am looking forward to that with much excitement, I should say, because the tomatoes, they're not very hard to grow. And this year, I could say that I was spoiled by the weather. And some of you that heard my speech last week, I believe it was, I talked about how my vegetable garden was spared by the hail. And even though the plants weren't ruined, I got plenty of rain, and I haven't had to water them much recently, I should say. The only problem I'm having now is problem with weeds. The weeds creep in all over the place. So that's my project for the next couple of days, and also to start getting the tomatoes, pick the tomatoes, find a nice place to keep them until tomorrow afternoon, when I'm going to start canning with my sister and my mother. The other thing, the other item that I have in my garden is green beans. I have plenty green, not a plethora. I have an enormous amount of green beans. I have probably at least a dozen, I think they're called Kentucky whole beans, and then I have some regular green bean plants. The chickens love them. My chickens eat a very nutritious diet, one might say, because not only do they like tomatoes in small amounts because of the acid, they also love the beans. And I put the beans and a handful of greens every day in a little suet feeder that's nailed up inside their coop. So they always have fresh greens, grass, dandelion, the greens from dandelions. And where my son lives in Gasport, there is a ton of clover. And I always grab handfuls and I shove it in this little suet feeder. David.
You get white, brown, and green eggs? Get all three colors?
I get white from the white leghorns, white eggs. The red hen has a darker brown egg. And the black Australorp, or LORP, I think it is, Australorp, they have a lighter brown color. So I get three colors. It's pretty neat. I think it's pretty cool. And I've been fortunate to have the ability to raise them and have a little piece of land where my son and his mom live to do all this. I'm very, very fortunate. Now that we've had our speakers, it's the time you've all been waiting for, is our evaluators to evaluate our two speakers this morning. And our first evaluator is Mark Campus. Mark will be evaluating Kate Orr's speech. Please help me welcome Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Kate. Good morning once again. The time you've all been waiting for. No pressure. Thanks a lot, Marty. So the Bewley Building, I want to thank you for sharing the background of our new home. And speaking for myself, having lived in the Lockport area for 26 years, I know of the building, but I really didn't know about the building. So thank you very much for sharing with us. So let's talk about what Kate did well, especially her speaking skills. First and foremost, Kate, you have an amazing talent. You were speaking and I never saw your lips move. It was incredible. All right, bad math joke. I'll be here all week. Anyway, your gestures were very expressive. Great job with that, especially while holding the microphone in one hand, which is a challenge. I thought your vocal variety was very good. And most importantly, I thought your pacing was good. Those of us that know Kate a long time know she can get fast with her speaking pace. And I've given her some ribbing about that because somewhere between her old fast pace and my normal slow pace is probably the right one. But Kate, I thought you were in a good place there and your pacing was really good. And above all, aside from the speaking skills that you exhibited today, it was a really well-researched speech. Now, building upon all this, I think you could have been even more effective in just a few ways. Remember, eye contact with the camera. You only did that a few times. You were working the audience here, but you didn't really make a lot of eye contact with us out in the internet. The second category, I'll lump two things together, movement and notes. So movement is a challenge in this format. We want to walk out behind the lectern. Sometimes we stay at the lectern. You seem to be caught in between. You wanted to move, you moved out from behind the lectern, but your notes are over here. Your notes are here. When we're using notes, it's like a virtual tether, but it became more noticeable to me because it was off on the side, so it was more apparent. You couldn't sneak the peaks as well as you normally might if it was right beneath you. So I think maybe for this speech, stay a little closer to the lectern just because you had a lot of facts, so there's no harm in using all those notes. I think lastly, it was just a bit of an abrupt ending. I wasn't paying attention to the timer. I'm sure you were, obviously, so it just sort of came to a screeching halt. But I enjoyed your speech. Growing up where I did, we had a lot of big buildings, a lot of famous buildings. Takes a lot to impress me in that regard, but I enjoyed hearing about the rich history behind the Bewley Building. So great job today, Kate. Mr. Toastmaster.
Mark. Our next evaluator is Philip Russell, who will be evaluating Nancy Ferry's speech. Help me welcome Phil Russell.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Nancy. Caregiving 101. You caught my attention with that title. The reason being is my mother, my sister, my wife, all being nurses, have done a great deal of caregiving in their world. Now, I want to talk to you about some good things that you did and some ways that you might be able to improve. You grabbed my attention with the title. The opening, though, needs to be enhanced. The reason being, you need to really grab everyone because the opening was just a little bland. Exhilarate it. Get yourself into it. Now, the first part of it, you're using visuals. And visuals are there to enhance a speech, not to be the speech. Your first half, those visuals fit that very well. It caught my eye because I'm on the home computer and on my phone, I could see both you and I could see your visuals. I had two screens to see it. It worked for me. When you got to the second part, which was basically how you basically handle caregiving, because that's a tough job, extremely tough job. I know. My mother started the Senior Citizen Center. She was a nurse. My sister, she got into the after, you know, whatever it is where you're about to die. And she does that and she has to cope. Now, what happened in the second part, I thought the visuals overtook it. You only needed a couple to explain how you deal with this very traumatic and very disturbing, I couldn't do it, very disturbing way of dealing with things. It's extremely difficult. You handled it extremely well because you vented what was. But and there was two parts to that speech. The first part being what it was and how you handled it. I felt that you overstated your point with all of the way you coped. I thought it were great stories, and I'd love to hear a whole speech on how you cope. But it was about caregiving. So I thought caregiving should have been more, and how you cope down, and then cut out some of the visuals. You need to also spice up that close. Open, close, get it, body, everybody will get it. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Phil. At this point, I'd like to call for a timer's report. Sylvia.
Again, everyone qualified. Mark at 3.10. Phil right under the wire, 3.26. Good job.
Thank you, Sylvia. At this point, you can mark your ballots for our best evaluator, Mark or Philip. And again, our virtual members can private message Larry McKenzie with their vote. And I know many of you have your own memories of summertime pleasures. And I suggest that you hold on to those memories to get you through the seasons. You know, we're not going to have this 90-degree temperature forever. So hang on to this memories of the weather and your summertime pleasures to help get you through the seasons, the up and coming seasons. Well, Tom is collecting our votes for best evaluator, and Larry is going to be tabulating the votes from our virtual members. I would just like to start going through the reports at this time. And then I will call on our general evaluator, Mike Licata, to evaluate the Toastmaster and the evaluators. Our first roll holder to report is our master, Beth Banks.
Good morning again, Marty, our Toastmaster of the day. We had a few we had a few okays that kind of slid in. Marty, at one point you lost focus when you were trying to introduce Mark. It seemed like you lost it a little bit there. Mark, you snuck in and so it really was slid in very, if I hadn't been listening very carefully myself, I would have missed that. I didn't hear any from Kate. Phil, yes, your word is now. You also used and, you had a little there also. Nancy, you used and as a filler word several times. I did like some of your quotes or messages you had, but I think we had a very good meeting overall. I would like to say one thing as coming from home, I don't really know the tech involved, but today the main camera seemed to be on the audience, not on the speaker for me at home. I don't know if the rest of you found that at home. I would prefer it being on the speaker rather than the audience. Is that possible?
Yeah, it's possible. Mom, it's on both. Where are you? Where is the camera?
Yes, we have both, but the main one was on the audience. If I went to speaker view, it was the audience, not the speaker.
Yeah, what I found is I would toggle back to the gallery view.
Right.
And then if I went, I a couple times I went back to speaker view and then I got what I was looking for. But if it was not on who I wanted, I went to gallery.
Yes, that's what I had to do.
Speaker view won't really work because the camera we're using has the mic on it.
My video.
Yeah. You need to pin Larry's video.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Len. At one point, I think when during table topics, I couldn't see the speaker, so I pinned the individual, and then I was able to see him. So yeah, that's the right way to do it.
I will have to learn how to do that. Thank you.
Marion, Carol Ann.
Okay, a couple things I noticed. When Tom said arouse instead of arose, to me, I just picked up on that. Steve used a lot, and we, for description, and I know most of us use that, but sometimes maybe pick a different adjective to describe a lot. Tom's speech, he mentioned in the table topics, he said like 9 were there. Maybe you could eliminate the like. Marty said anyways a couple times. And also, not to pick on Marty, but he was talking about his tomatoes and he said the tomatoes, they. And Phil said, my sister, she. And otherwise, that everyone had pretty good command of the language today. Mr. Toastmaster.
Next, our tech and gesture master, Jennifer Zappa.
Thank you. It has been such a challenge doing a hybrid meeting. Well, not for me. It's easy for me. I just sit back and watch. But I think it's been a challenge for Len and Larry. And the last couple of meetings, we've started a few minutes late as a result. I think today we got in here late. But it's a real setup process for everyone to do. So first off, I want to say excellent job. I noticed that you guys took one of my notes from the first meeting, which was to move this camera from this side because everybody kept walking by it. But for people here in the room, I think there are a couple things to note, especially if you haven't attended virtually since we've been hybrid. And that is when you walk by these cameras, like you think you're ducking under it, but I can still see the top of your head every time you go by. So I don't know, crawl or something. But just be aware that that's happening. Overall, I think that it's been difficult to try to maintain eye contact with the audience and the camera for people in person. And I know that a couple people in the audience are still having issues making eye contact with the camera. Phil, I noticed that on you today. Mark, you had excellent eye contact, so kudos on that. Overall, I think we're having a difficult time like remembering what to do when we're speaking, but I think we're doing a good job coming back at it. I noticed for our speakers today, Kate, you had really great physicality and arm gestures, but there was definitely what Mark was saying, there was like some swaying going on, and I'm not sure if you knew where to go with it. And at one point, you definitely put your hand in your pocket. which seems like a nervous gesture. I'm not sure. Nancy, I thought you did actually a great job making eye contact with the camera virtually, but maybe not quite as good with the audience, interestingly. And you spent a lot of time looking at your PowerPoint, which I know you were kind of referring to, but it was a little distracting if you were watching from home. You did a great job switching the mic, and I think that the mic was good for you. Marty, you need to work on the directional mic use for sure. You definitely were out here. And every time you do that, that cuts out for the people virtually for sure. Phil, when you hold things up to the camera, we can't see you when you see whatever you're holding up when you're using a virtual background. So don't forget that. We can only see you. That is many of my notes. One thing I wanted to ask the audience, I know there were probably a lot of things I didn't catch from virtually. The table was definitely moving anytime someone was clapping. I think that was corrected at one point, but I'm not sure if that got better. Did it get better? Okay. And the other thing I wanted to say, I noticed when I was virtually attending that whenever people clap, the mic cut out. So I don't know if that's still the case. When there's a lot of clapping, can you hear?
Yeah, it completely knocks everything down. It's a little disorienting because it sounds like you've lost the audio. And
Yep.
when you're introduced and people are clapping, I just tried to pause a few seconds because I really couldn't tell when everybody was done. So.
Yeah. So I wanted to point that out for people here. You probably don't know that if you haven't gone back and watched, but Dave, like that vociferous, like that really clapping until someone comes up here is really distracting for the people watching virtually. So just FYI, I'm not saying don't clap. I'm just saying like a lot of prolonged clapping. Like I think we need to take a pause in between the clapping and the person starting so that the people at home can hear. So I wanted to point that out because I don't think that people here probably know that. Sorry, that was a lot of notes, guys. That's all my talk and gesture report.
No, it's good. It's
All
good.
right, thank you.
I need it. 8:19, we're good. 8:19. Clap, clap, clap. No, it says clap. And then longer pause. That's what we're saying. Excellent.
Thank you, Jen. Next, our quiz master, the time you've all been waiting for. Test our memory, Jackie Cuddy.
Okay, that's enough clapping. All right. David listed 3 things that he enjoys doing that were not stopped by the pandemic. Can you remember what they were?
Fishing,
Golfing.
golf,
Talking. No, hanging out, chilling out.
Hanging out, right, yes, thank you.
I thought it was gonna be talking.
How many push-ups can Thomas do?
not 10.
It doesn't back then, I mean.
I think he needs to
How
go through
many
basic.
hens does Marty have?
6.
Bonus point if you can remember any of the varieties.
A leg.
Red, white, and black.
Red.
He's got that one
leg,
born with a southern accent.
Well, slow for all for all.
Foghorn Leghorn, which is his house.
Redneck.
And Jen said she's going on vacation. Did she tell us where?
No, she
was
didn't.
going?
No.
I know, I wanted to know, Jen.
Exotic destinations and she's keeping it a secret.
Smart girl.
What road do you take to get to Marty's cooling off spot?
I road.
Okay. And what year was the first self-operating elevator introduced and in this?
55.
Very good, David. All right, thank you. Everyone was paying attention.
Dave was here.
Dave was here, yes, he probably was. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
I was 7.
Our word master, Larry McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. This word was exhilarating. Counting that time, 22 times the word was used today. The winner was Marty because he actually gave us the word, but we will not count Marty as the official winner because Nancy, where's Nancy? Nancy, 4 times you used the word within your speech. Kudos to you. A tidbit for those of you at home. If you're looking at a screen such as mine and you want to pin it, if you look in the top right corner, you'll see there's 3 little dots there. Click on those 3 little dots. It'll give you a drop-down menu. Go to where it says pin speaker. Boom. Hit that little button. Voila, you've got me. And if you want to be really creative, you can add a second pin and put it next to it. But we won't get to that right now. You just want to pin the one. So that'll give you that little tidbit of how to do that. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
We've heard the reports. I'd like to welcome Mike Licata for his general evaluation of the meeting. Mike Licata.
Thank you, Marty. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, this morning, I had the pleasure of evaluating 2 very, very strong speakers. Both Mark and Phil have been with this club for a very, very long time, so they both did a great job. Mark with the more traditional sandwich approach, which was positive, the meat of the sandwich being all the ways that cake can make improvement, and then you usually finish with a positive. Phil was a little bit different, more of a club sandwich where he offered an improvement and then gave critiques of the overall type of the speech, finished with how she could make improvements as well. On to Marty. This is a very unenviable task when you fill in to be a Toastmaster. It's a role not a lot of people take. So I want to first of all thank you for filling in with only a week's notice and for such an enriching topic this morning. The topic was, you came in with a lot of knowledge. It's very important to do something simple, but you brought a lot of information, and we all took away something from what you presented this morning. That being said, I do recommend, I know it's low tech, but pick up a telephone wouldn't be the worst idea, especially with trying to reintroduce some of the Toastmasters that have left during the virtual only experience, bring them back in a hybrid, and that's a suggestion for everyone going forward as being a Toastmaster, because it's important to remember that we're all not technology savvy, and then maybe pick up the phone and making a simple phone call just to check in on with certain people too would be important going forward. But I think it was a great meeting overall. I think you did a great job, and I will bring up the president, and we can hand out the awards and everything like that. So I'll bring up Thomas to hand out the awards and go over the Toastmaster for next week. All right.
She is aware.
So I'm gonna go have a wonderful summer. I'm all set.
Oh, that's the summer.
Excellent. Well, I enjoyed the summer meeting. Still a rating.
23.
What's 20? 23 individuals at our meeting today.
23 uses of the word.
Oh, an additional use. One of the things I'd like to ask is that everyone look to invite guests. Now that it's hybrid, they can both be in person with you, or they can come online. Now they have more options. It's very hard to say no when you offer them something like a cup of coffee or, get them some Tim Hortons while they're on their way. I'm going to work on trying to get a guest this for the next meeting, and I hope everyone else does as well. We can't grow membership without getting some people new people involved. We're going to talk about our winners today. For table topics this morning, it was Jen Zappa. was hoping Marty would win. I like the cheap jokes. All right. Then we're gonna say a speaker for last. So we're gonna go on to Best Evaluator. Best Evaluator this morning was Mark Campos. It up anytime.
He did, he tried to grab it.
And our speaker of the day was Nancy.
There you go. Take the ribbon and draw the 50.
Draw the 50-50.
You want me to grab it?
Back up into the screen.
I'll back off the screen.
No, no.
Keep going, keep going, keep going.
You come in
Shy.
the view. There you go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Ticket number 344986.
Yay! Hey, Sylvia.
Sylvia.
I don't think you've ever won it. Thank you.
Please remember to take your tickets, write your name on the back of the tickets, and put them in for the drawing, second chance drawing for your dues.
The dues are due, so pay them.
Yes.
Go to the link.
If you didn't pay for a full year, if you're paying every 6 months, your dues are due. But if you pay annually, you probably aren't getting any kind of notification.
There was an email that said,
There was-
thank you, you don't have to.
Oh.
Sylvia's on top of that. Did it say that? You said it.
Yeah.
I thought you did. You were like, these people paid for a year. The rest of you owe money.
I try to pay for a full year, that way it's just one less thing I need to do.
She probably knows.
All right, this evening, we're gonna have our Zoom. It's not really the happy hour meeting, I guess it's more the business meeting.
Yeah.
So from 7 to 7:30, we're gonna have an open, like, general discussion and talk about things
About this location.
about this location, the hybrid meeting, what our plans are for the future, what we're gonna be doing. Then 7:30 to 8 is gonna be the officers meeting. We're gonna take business. There's some voting to do on district level candidates. Luckily, a lot of the offices only have one candidate, so it's not too hard to vote. Go ahead, Dave.
If you were to attend the Zoom meeting tonight, it's the same meeting number and password?
Yes.
The
Yes,
social
Thank you.
hour, yeah.
yes, the social hour
Oh,
pass.
it's also, you know what, it's also conference time going on right now. It's international conference. It started Monday morning and it goes until Saturday, I think. It's free for a lot of the things. It's $25 to get the higher level access, but you can jump in anytime. I strongly encourage you. You should have all been getting emails. Mine sometimes filter out, so check your trash and spam too. I keep having to make it accepted because it's seen as spam with a high risk, I guess. But anyway, I might have a high filter. So anyway, check Toastmasters International because it's gonna get free access for a bunch of things that usually would be hundreds of dollars and a trip to somewhere. And right now you can do it from home. So
Right, the wider the links is usually why they'll go to trash, is because
Yeah.
it's these big links.
anyway,
Secure.
They just sent out an email also from International, which I believe is something that they're doing at the conference with Pathways. They said now that Pathways has been established, they are revamping level 1 and then adding a couple of
Good.
things
It's a
to
good-
it.
I think it's
Which
a good
one
move.
is creating a speech and how to do that, and the other is gestures and how to use them within your speech. So that will be in addition to level 1s for all of the paths in the future.
moving forward, yeah.
So there'll be more speeches in level 1?
No, they're gonna drop the research one that we just did because a lot of
Okay.
us, take a look at the email or that TI
It was an email
announcement
that
page.
came
Okay,
email.
Yes, yes. Okay,
Because it's
that email.
8:30, so
Yes.
we should get done.
All right. And then, of course, the last bit of news is this Sunday at Margin Manor is our annual picnic at 1 o'clock. We're gonna have awards at 1:30, so please try to be there at 1 o'clock. And bring your own food to pass. You bring any alcohol, it needs to be made in New York State,
Or just buy it from Margot.
or buy it from Margot. That's always a good thing to do as well. Yes. I always take a bottle of wine home.
Wear your shirts or royal blue for the photo. And
Try and do the royal blue?
badges,
Okay.
et cetera,
Also, we all
the
match.
normal
Okay.
thing.
I didn't even put that it was at Margam in the last